Good news, everyone. So I'm here to talk about chart readings. You've probably have gone on to Astro Cafe or Astro Lab or Lab or whatever website generates free natal charts and stuff like that at this point. You might have even gotten a chart drawn up or done by a professional astrologer. Why not? Um, and then you might have read books where the books tell you, okay, this is what it means to have Jupiter in Aries, this is what it means to have Neptune in Pisces, and blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of segmented, right? So you don't have it all together in um, one interpretation because yeah, and like I don't know, maybe that's my whole problem with astrology in the first place, where it's like, okay, you have a sun in Aries, right? Awesome, cool, Aries sun. So you might be like a war person or a boss, blah blah blah. And I know that astrology dives deeper and hits and resonates more than just vague generalizations. But I always feel at the core there is some sense of it being, a generalization or stereotype of those energies. Stereotypes be true, but at the same time, I myself, so a lot of the services I provide are services that I was looking for 10 years ago when I was starting my adult spiritual journey. And as I've been on the spiritual journey, the social media journey, all these things since I was like 12, 13 years old. Um, like, yeah. Like you think tarotbae is brand new. I've been tarotbae since I was a child. Um, yeah. So the way that I read charts is that your first chart reading, I will most likely talk about your sun sign, and then just kind of walk through the houses, probably like with your rising sign. And then, as you ask different questions, you're like, okay, well, what can my chart tell me about love, or what does my chart tell me about money? Then I'll dive into deeper things like your moon and your Venus and what that says, and the houses and the positioning and the different degrees. Um, so it's not a course, you know what I mean? It's not a course. It's difficult for me to even stay on subject for these videos, let alone, put you into some type of astrology learning stockade, right? Astrological learning stockade. So you just sit there and I'd throw a lob tomatoes of astrological knowledge at you. Um, because also I am like an intuitive astrologer, meaning that like I don't get lost in the minutia of the mathematical details of astrology because I don't see it as it's not that I don't see it as a science, it's just that I don't see it as laser beams. I don't see them as these acute angles being shot at us, which maybe they are. I don't know. I feel like some of the angles have to be obtuse, right? Um, I always see it as like seasoning, or I always feel like astrological energies are seasoning and pollen. So if you have a sun in Aries, it's like you are seasoned with anger, right? So you might not be an angry person. You might be a person who's very adverse to anger, or there's just some type of nuance of anger in your life. Um, or your reaction to anger, or the way that you exhibit anger may be different than other people. Like you have a sun in Aries, you might be angry all the time. You may never get angry to a toxic and weird extent. That's why I say it's a seasoning. Like you might get some chicken flavored ramen, and you're like, this doesn't taste like any chicken I've ever eaten before. You know what I mean? But like, what kind of beef are they basing this off of? Um, so there's that. So if I would break it into some type of rigid course, I would say, the first reading I would walk through I walk through your rising sign, explaining to you what that is. A lot of people already know, and a lot of people, especially yourself as you study your own chart, probably have higher understanding, heightened understanding of the aspects in your chart that are noteworthy. But for me, like I said, like services that I wanted 10 years ago, it would just be better to get like someone's intuitive interpretation on it. Like, hey, even if it's just your big three, like, hey, I got, sun, moon, rising this. What does that make you like? What kind of job does that make you think of? If you had to, um, make an assumption about me based on these handfuls of positionings, what is it? And I think that's interesting to hear. But when I walk you through, I think like the most impactful reading that you can get from me would be to first do a chart reading where I walk you through your like from your rising to the 12th house, because and then do a tarot scope because I feel like your rising sign, your natal chart, that's where you were at birth, and that's where you are at birth and before you start working on yourself. And I feel like tarot is where you are this minute. So there might be iterations of you from 10, 15 years ago that were very high vibrating and high functioning, right? Whereas like now you might have slowed down or sped up or whatever the case may be. You've changed. So, you might have 10, 15 years ago got a chart reading and saw that, you have Venus in Aquarius, and you're like, oh, Venus in Aquarius as I'm very experimental, and I struggle with steady relationships. I struggle with like holding on to steady relationships because I'm kind of ADD or ADHD, whatever. uh, and then you know that about yourself, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to painstakingly uh, force myself to stay into relationships, but I'm going to go into my relationships with the understanding that I'm like a kid at a soda fountain who wants to, mix every flavor. I want the Dr. Pepper and the Sprite and the 7 Up and the Baja Blast, all in one cup. Harem. I might have an Aquarius Venus. But so stuff like that. What are we talking about? Chart readings. Um, and now I just want soda. This video is about soda now. Um, but yeah, so you do that 10, 15 years ago, and then so you're not, you might have a Venus in Aquarius, but you're not a person that struggles with relationships because you've worked on yourself. You've done physical, mental, spiritual work on yourself, and now you're no longer caught in the negative sides or the follies of the Venus in Aquarius, right? So it may not be so helpful for you to continue to get chart readings when you have, I don't even know if this is possible, but if when you've filled most of the caveats that are inside your chart. Because I look at my chart and I'm like, I don't really have a lot of Libra and Cancer energies of like domesticity and niceties and politeness, which is something I've been working on. Whereas like now a lot of that has changed. So if I look at my chart and it says, okay, this person struggles with X, Y, and Z, it's like that person struggled with X, Y, and Z, and now they're excelling at X, Y, and Z. So that's why I'm saying like Sun in Aries, this person could have extreme rage issues, or this could be a person who has steadily gone to anger management. I don't even know if anger management is a thing. It's that movie with Adam Sandler and what's his name? Not Johnny Knoxville. Um, Jack Nicholson. Oh my God, Johnny Knoxville. Yeah. So that's what chart readings are. You book them on my booking site. I don't know. A part of me will probably always do it somewhat by text or writing stuff down or writing notes to myself. I prefer everything to be a phone call. But I think the like if I were you if I were you perusing my site, I would do the videos. The videos, I just feel like they're better. You can listen to them, and moving forward. You know what I mean? So like, let's say 10 years, you get a chart reading video done by me. You get a chart reading video done by a couple other people. You listen to them. You're like, oh wow, a lot of this stuff happened. A lot of stuff they say is the same. I know a lot of spiritualists or people in general get territorial, but I love when my clients tell me like, "Oh, I talked to this other person. They said the exact same things that you said." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So now you know that like I'm accurate. So that's chart readings. I think that's all the information that you need. Um, all right, I'll talk to you guys later.